It really just gives you the understanding as to what the coaches, what the teams are looking for. I like the fact that they're not just talking to Joe Shane and Brian Dable, but they are talking to the other people that are helping Joe Shane and Brian Dable make decisions on players and what they're looking for. And it really gives you an idea when they sit through those speed dating classes, as one of the people were, I don't know who said that. It might have been one of the wide receivers or maybe one of the quarterbacks said it. When you sit in those meetings with those coaches and those people that are around you, and how you're trying to impress them with your football knowledge, with your understanding, and they're looking for the right people. I mean, and we've often talked about that here, about the process that goes on in the offseason. And I'm glad that Hard Knocks did this, because it just goes to show you how hard it is to find the right person. And I have to say, watching all three wide receivers go through their interview process, they had Rome Odunze in there, Marvin Harrison Jr. in there, and of course, Malik Neighbors. I was thoroughly impressed with all three of those young men. I mean, I could take either one of those guys and say I can win with them. That's I'm glad that the Giants got Neighbors. Now, I think they were trying to get a quarterback. It was not going to happen because other teams needed quarterbacks that they were trying to trade with. And maybe this does put Daniel Jones on blast for whatever reason. But, man, I have to say, that was a eye-opening show last night. It was a great show last night. And if you didn't see it, go back to Max. You can watch it if you have a Max subscription. It is an HBO production.
Yes.
But it is on Max now because there is no HBO, because Max, obviously, HBO changed its name to Max. So it was great, and I can't wait. If it continues like this is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, and it really it showed us way more than I thought we were going to see, as we talked about how the Giants were in full final say, rather, of the content. So there was a bunch of stuff that Max would put together and then show the Giants, and Giants would say, yes, you could show that. No, you can't show that. So we both thought that there was no way that they were going to dip into we're going to try to draft a quarterback thing, that they were not going to show us that. They were going to show us the Saquon stuff because Saquon is gone, but they weren't going to show us the quarterback stuff because Daniel Jones is still here. And the scene of Joe Shane talking to the guys around him at the combine going, I'm just going to walk over to the Patriots and let them know if they're interested at all in trading that pick to just make sure to call me. I'm going to go over and do that. And then he walks.
That's the other part of it.
Right. So then he walks over there and they say, wow, years past, you never even looked in here. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, I was getting anxiety walking over here too. Obviously talking about Bill Belichick. And he goes, just so you know, he goes, Joe Shane says to the Patriots, he goes, do me a favor. If you just have any inkling or anything, if you're thinking about it, just think of me. Make sure that you think of me. And I was like, whoa, because that Daniel Jones is now seeing that going, all right, whatever rumors there were that I wasn't supposed to believe because they took Malik Neighbors and didn't trade up, now I know. And also, the Giants aren't going to sit there day in and day out at the combine and test the top quarterbacks in the draft if they weren't interested in taking one of them.
And this was also, I think it was before that they made the trade for their backup quarterback.
Yes, Drew Lock.
Drew Lock, yes. So, I mean, this is the reality of this business. It's a people business. The people that are in the business are trying to find the right fits for their football team. And the football team itself, the player itself, me as a football player, I am a commodity. And I am bought and sold. I am traded. I am given. The whole scenario, if you will, of this is like human nature. And it is people talking about people without talking about people.
Yeah.
So every time the moment that Joe Shane goes over to New England and says what he says, the moment that they're interviewing quarterbacks, they're not really talking about Daniel Jones, but they really are talking about Daniel Jones because they don't know what to expect from Daniel Jones. And then when I couple all of that with Daniel Jones's injury history, I think he's had 9 injuries in the NFL, and you look at the severity of a few of those injuries, you then take what Joe Buck said after during one of their games when Brian Daboll was lamenting to Joe Buck that he had to be the energy, that I need my quarterback to be the energy. And then you take Rich Eisen, who basically said after or at the combine that the Giants are done with Daniel Jones. I mean, they're stuck with Daniel Jones, essentially. When I'm sitting here this morning, that's how I look at it.
Oh yeah, and that's how I think everybody looks at it.
That's how they're looking at it.
Yeah, I mean it is.
No matter what we think, as Joe Shane doesn't listen to us,
right? As he said in episode 1,
right.
but yeah, I also think that will the Joe Shane, Brian Daboll regime get their opportunity to bring in their own quarterback to mentor? Because when you're in this quarterback purgatory that they're in, where you're bad, but you're not so bad that you're at the very top of the draft to get the top guys, and they were at 6 this past year, and obviously we know 1, 2, 3 were quarterbacks, and what the hell do you do? Because a lot of them aren't out there in free agency. That very rarely happens. There are some trades, but if it's trades, it's guys like Russell Wilson that when he got traded to Denver wanted a contract. When he got traded to Pittsburgh, he fell out of favor. So it's not like you're getting some guy that you absolutely want, or Aaron Rodgers at the end of his career and had, was trying something else. So really it's a unique situation when you get a quarterback in free agency or a trade. So what the hell do you do? So you're just spinning your wheels with Daniel Jones. Now, the Giants didn't have to give Daniel Jones that contract. But after that game in Minnesota, I mean, really, that performance up in Minnesota ended up screwing the Giants at the quarterback position for years and years and years. And there's no way that they could have just let him go at that point. They had to sign him. They had to. That would have been a bold move. They were just like, nope. Sorry, Daniel, after the greatest game that you ever played in your life, and then obviously they went up to Philadelphia and lost and got killed, but after the greatest game you ever played in your life in a playoff game, we're going to move on from you.
Well, the amazing thing is they could have drafted either Michael Penix Jr. or they could have drafted J.J. McCarthy, because they were still there when they drafted Malik Neighbors, and they didn't feel as strongly about those two players, obviously.
Right, as they did with Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams. Obviously was a lock for the Bears. But yeah, they seemed to really like Drake May, and Drake May, of course, was able to spit back the plays, I think, better than anybody that they were interviewing. So
didn't you feel like Drake May is like the second coming of Daniel Jones?
No. I don't, actually.
Yeah, the thing is that, and I know what Brian Daboll wants, because I know what Brian Daboll has been around, whether it be Brett Favre, whether it be Josh Allen, whether it be Tua Tagovailoa or Jalen Hurts. I know the type of personality he wants. And, maybe Daniel, look, we've interviewed Daniel. He's a very nice kid, and you want him to do well. You expect him to do well. He's committed to the team. He's got the respect of his teammates, but he's not an energy guy. He's not going to be screaming at anybody. He's not going to be slamming the tablet down on the sideline. He's not going to get in the face of his teammates like Tom Brady would. I mean, that's the extreme. Peyton Manning would. All the great quarterbacks of yesteryear all have the same personality trait that, they are the guy. They want to be the guy. They want to take it all on. They want everything on their plate, and they want to run practice. They want to run meetings. They want to take the offensive line out for dinner. They want to they want to bust the chops with the wide receivers and the running backs. They want to, they want to compete and practice against the defense. I mean, all of those attributes are the most important attributes that you can have as a quarterback. And that's, I think, the frustration, along with the injuries that Daniel has suffered, that I feel, nobody has told me this, but I get the sense that is the frustration that both Joe Shane and Brian Daboll have.
And we always talk about GM speak and how these guys never say anything, and they shouldn't say anything in certain press conferences because there's really no point. Like, we get on Rob Saleh for talking too much, and he has this verbal diarrhea and then paints himself into a corner, and Joe Shane just doesn't let that happen to him. Now, different jobs, but still, and there's this scene where they are sitting down. It's Joe Shane and one of the members of the media relations, and they're going through all the questions he's going to be asked, and then the follow-up questions, and then what he's going to say. And then they cut that and splice that with the actual press conference, and it's really fascinating. And Joe Shane says, when they were going through the Saquon questions about the franchise tag and everything else, Joe Shane says, well, I offered him a bunch of money. This is not at the podium. This is with the media relations guy. He goes, well, I offered him a bunch of money last year. He didn't want to take it, so I don't know what to tell you. Then he goes, listen, I'm not going to say that, because the PR guy was like, whoa, don't say that. So
I mean, you would think that this is like the nuclear codes or the president of the United States standing up there talking about we're going to go invade, Russia or something.
Yeah, but you know what? But it's so competitive and your livelihoods are on the line.
I understand that. But, we all know what's going on. We all understand. And we're not idiots. I mean, and the fans know about their team better than we do sometimes.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I feel like I know the Rangers better than Chris Drury. But then again, I'm not hamstrung by the salary cap like they are.
Right.
And, one of the really interesting things that I found last night was watching when the salary cap number came through.
Yeah.
And the way that Joe Schoen reacted. And I'm just thinking, before you react like that, don't you want to call the owner in and say, how much of this can I spend?
Well, I think all of it, right up to the cap. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Well, some teams don't do that.
Yeah, well, the Giants are going to.
And sometimes you got to remember, you're already paying guys a certain amount of money that are not playing for you.
There's
right. Some dead cap money out there and all that other stuff that you're dealing with. But Joe Schoen was very happy to see that number come out. And then I was thinking about the whole Saquon Barkley thing. So if you're Saquon, I kind of understand his mindset. Okay, you drafted me number 2 overall. I've had some injuries here, but I've also done everything you've asked of me. We haven't been a very good team. We've gone through a number of coaches. This is not the most stable franchise. I've been the guy that's been, asked to do the most because the quarterback is not doing the most. You give him $82 million guaranteed. You can't even give me $15 million guaranteed. And then on top of that, you make a trade for Brian Burns and you give him a huge contract. But I've been here for 6 years, and you're not respecting me because of the position that I play. So I totally understand why Saquon would want to go somewhere else, and I totally understand why Joe Schoen would not want to pay him because Joe Schoen did not draft him.
Yeah, so the episode ends with a phone call between Saquon Barkley and Joe Schoen, and Saquon just he does not sound enthused in the least bit. He sounds annoyed talking to Joe Schoen, even from the second that Joe Schoen says, "Hey, Saquon, what's going on?" And then he tells him flat out, after talking to Saquon's agent, he tells him flat out that we're not going to franchise you. We're going to let you test the market, and just promise me that when you see what the market is, you come back so we can maybe try to work something out. He goes,
which I think is the best thing for the player.
Right. And he says,
at that point,
he says, I appreciate that. And then Joe Schoen goes, well, do I have your word on that? And Saquon says, well, you already know where I want to be, referencing all the time. He says, I want to be a Giant for life and all of that stuff. Now, we'll see later on if that word is upheld by Saquon Barkley. And then in the preview of the next episode, speaking of ownership, John Mara, you hear John Mara in Joe Schoen's office say, I'm going to have trouble sleeping at night if Saquon leaves.
Yes. I don't know if that's for the cameras and to make everybody feel.
No. I'm telling you, John Mara loves Saquon Barkley. There was no doubt after the season when he had a press conference, they talked about him not trading Saquon Barkley and the whole deal, and wanted to keep him there and making sure that the fans had one of their better players there for the entire season. So, I'm telling you, he wanted to keep Saquon if possible, but he also trusted his general manager and head coach in doing the right thing.
Well, I'm glad he did. I mean, to the point where if you hire somebody like a Joe Schoen and a Brian Daboll, and they have had some success, and this is Joe Schoen's first foray as the actual GM making the decisions. I mean, you got to trust these guys. When you hire them, you got to give them the opportunity to do what they want to do. Now, they got boxed in with Daniel Jones. And that first year was unexpected, to say the least. I think everybody wanted to give Daniel a chance, and he answered the bell. They won 9 games, and they won a playoff game against a very, very bad Minnesota Viking defensive team. Did they overreact? I don't necessarily know that there was anybody out there in the NFL that was going to pay him that much money. And he was at the right place at the right time, and he did perform. But then, unfortunately, he got hurt again. I mean, and that's like, you can't predict those things. But like I said, Daniel, unfortunately for him, 13 starts in 2019, 14 starts in 2020, 11 starts in 21, 16 starts in 22 is a really good year, and only 6 starts in 23. But he has suffered, there's a list of like 9 injuries he's had since he's been the quarterback of the Giants. So you can totally understand, putting all of it together, why the Giants would be all in on trying to make a trade.